Welcome to the Mori Art Museum. Roppongi Crossing was launched in 2004 as a fixed-point observation of the current Japanese art scene. The exhibition is held at the museum once every 3 years. This, the fifth installment in the series, features work selected by 4 curators from Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Through the rich creative diversity of 20 individuals and groups, the exhibition examines Japanese contemporary art from a wide range of perspectives and explores the relationship between today's society and art. The theme of this exhibition is My Body, Your Voice. Due to various developments in science and information technology, perceptions of the body, forms of human relations, and methods of communication have undergone a drastic change. This has made it necessary to reevaluate social systems, roles, and values that were once taken for granted. Who am I? How is my body related to other people and to history? These artistic expressions, containing a mixture of the past and future, the self and the other, have the potential to help you discover a new way of relating with the world. Now let's listen to the artist. The title From A refers to the letter A, which is featured in the work. My focus on A began when I happened to find a letter A that had fallen off a metal sign while I was doing a residency in New York last year. A is the first letter of the alphabet, and it also suggests the origin of the species and the Greek word arche, or the root of all things. These are some of the meanings that the letter seemed to have. At first, I was worried about the disparity between the title of the exhibition, My Body, Your Voice, and my work. But as I was planning, it came across my mind that everything may work out if I return to a more fundamental point. So I decided to make a work by juxtaposing the idea of a voice and body that predated physical birth with these objects. By the way, there's one thing that I really wanted to say in this audio guide. In the upper right, you can see a very small traffic light that sometimes changes to green. I hope everyone will take note of this. Here we find a world that conveys a sense of the time and tenacity required to make meticulous handiwork. Katayama Mori, the artist who produced these works, had both of her legs amputated at the age of 9. Since then, she has used artificial limbs. Katayama's works are notable for the repeated appearance of dolls and prosthetic legs, making it seem as if she is trying to come to grips with her own elusive body. In a sense, the dolls are Katayama's alter egos. Who am I? Forced to face the fact that her body was different from other people's, Katayama constantly struggled with this question. And as an artist, she boldly produces work that deals with it head-on. Covered in a cocoon-like material in these photographs, Katayama's appearance is also indicative of our lives. Should we remain inside our shells or break out of them? That is something that each of us must decide for ourselves. Born in Okinawa, Ishikawa Ryuichi is a spirited young photographer who received the 2015 Kimura Ihei Award, an honor given to Japanese photographers. Let's listen to him.
Okinawan
Portraits 2010 to 2012 was the first series of portraits for me, so I tried all different ways to shoot. After people give me permission to take their picture, we start to talk, and they would say things that went far beyond anything I had imagined. And all of a sudden, a huge world seemed to emerge. This elderly gray-haired woman told me about her experiences during the war. My generation of Okinawans has heard a bit about the war from our grandmothers and our teachers, but I don't think we really paid much attention. Or at least I didn't. This woman tried as hard as she could to tell me these things with a smile, but she couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her face. I realized for the first time when I saw her face what a terrible thing war is. Until then, I had never seen anyone with this kind of expression. The other picture shows a man wearing a cap whose eyebrows were carefully manicured. Just as I was going to snap his picture, a mosquito buzzed overhead and landed on him. I thought, fantastic, and I snapped the picture. As Sawa Hidaki searched for his own identity, he experienced a sense of freedom and alienation as an outsider living between two cultures: England, the country where he has long lived, and Japan, the country where he was born. In this work, dealing with the theme of self-portraits, he again sets out to confront himself. The image of the person climbing up and down a ladder in this video work can be seen as Sawa himself as a craftsman engaged in the production of art. It also seems to represent the aimless activities that people perform in their lives. Sawa is also showing here two-dimensional works in which he drew on top of old portraits of his grandparents that he found in a photo album. When the present you witnesses a moment that occurred in the past, it suggests the existence of a self with the ability to transcend time. Now let's listen to the artist. Instead of just being a spatial work, for this exhibition, I decided to make an installation with a temporal core. The work has a beginning and an ending, as if it is a movie or a play. It deals with things like how I felt after experiencing the Great East Japan earthquake, which occurred in 2011, with complicated interactions among people. The work was inspired by my son, who's now 2. After having him, I began to think about how people create themselves, and this is now one of my themes that I have been working on. Although museums tend to be a place where we look at paintings and sculptures and other things that don't move, in this work, the lighting changes like a theater, and you can experience something special. Viewers can enjoy looking at the lights and imagining things that normally would never move. In the last scene, there's a recitation of a poem. It's a poem by Tanikawa Shuntaro called Shibafu, Lawn. The poem conveys something about imagining things and considering what we are in a very direct way. I hope everyone will stay to watch this last scene. In recent years, Takayama Akira has been active in both drama and art productions that focus on Asian communities in Japan. The monitors on one side of the wall show foreign laborers from countries such as Iran and Turkey standing on planned construction sites for facilities connected to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. They talk about their homelands, myths, cities, and legends connected to the creation of monuments. On the monitors on the other side of the wall, people who worked in the construction industry at the time of the 1964 Tokyo Olympics recount their memories in tandem with footage from the era. These men, who worked behind the scenes to help realize the two festivals, are now linked across time. The work reminds us that while some things may have changed in Japan and elsewhere in the world, other things remain the same. Buttons of various colors cover the floor. Pick up one of the buttons and try to toss it onto the target. When you actually try it, the game turns out to be pretty difficult. It also looks different from other games. Everything here is in some way incomplete. There are buttons with all kinds of different shapes and colors, a shoe-shaped object missing its mate, and a gem from a bracelet, the only part that was removed and enlarged. Nobuhiro Kazuhiro explains, "It's a collection of things or actions that are unbalanced. By temporarily forgetting the rules of contemporary society, which demands integrity and balance, we might discover something new, something that we would usually overlook." In a project called American Boyfriend, Okinawa-born Miyagi Futoshi examines issues related to the U.S. military in Okinawa and intimate relationships between men. One part of the project, titled Flower Names, begins with the story of Chloris, the flower nymph. This is followed by a section from Mozart's opera and a tale of gay romance between the writer Marcel Proust and the composer Reynaldo Hahn. In the final section, a drag queen performs Hahn's composition, A Chloris. Miyagi was inspired to make the work by a news report on a drag show that was staged by soldiers on a U.S. base in Okinawa. For the last scene, he commissioned one of these men to sing the song. With a sense of hope, Miyagi explores the relationships that transcend simple boundaries and divisions like friend and foe, and assailant and victim. These bold pictures were painted on huge canvases with Japanese ink. Goto Yasuka's work deals with the theme of soldiers. It was inspired by stories her relatives told her about their experiences in the Pacific War and pictures from old photo albums. The works displayed here focus on Goto's grandfather, who, after enlisting in the army, was assigned to a special attack unit. In Imo Arai, he is crammed inside a transport ship. In Yosegaki, he is writing messages with his comrades after being trained and prior to being dispatched to various fronts. Despite the seriousness in the scenes, the pictures convey the soldiers' individual personalities and emotions, and are also imbued with a vague sense of humor. Aioi-bashi, or Aioi Bridge, depicts an imaginary scene in which a youthful version of Goto's grandfather, who is infatuated with the idea of being a soldier, meets himself after he has enlisted. The bridge is said to have been the target of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. When his grandfather came home, after nearly being sent on a suicide attack, he apparently found his family's house burned to the ground near this bridge. The personal story Goto recounts provides us with a new perspective on the war. In this work, two videos are interspersed with each other. One is an excerpt from the Japanese education system, a film produced by the U.S. Army in the 40s to help people understand the enemy. The second is a video of a workshop that Fuji Hikaru conducted with a group of Korean university students last year. In the workshop, the students watch documentary footage of the war and try to recreate what they see. As they reenact these brutal scenes, their faces display a wide range of emotions, from embarrassed grins to indifference and bafflement. They are baffled at having to act out these historical events from the distant past, and they are also reluctant to perform them. Kurashi no Techo, Handbook of Living, is a magazine that was widely read by Japanese housewives after the war and is still published today. In the 1970s, the magazine's editor put out a book on the meaning of a flag that called for people to live their own lives without relying on national or corporate support. This was rooted in a sense of regret that people had once recklessly obeyed the government and headed into war. This anecdote inspired Sasa Shun to create this work using a flag motif. On one screen, we see some female readers of Kurashi no Techo. They wave flags that they made out of scraps and fabrics that held a special meaning for them. On the second screen, we see Sasa, dressed as a woman, waving a large flag made up of all the women's flags. When each citizen waves a flag that they have made, it creates an image that is distinctly different from a flag that is used to invigorate a group. This video is by Shimura Nobuhiro, shot last year in Mishima, a remote island in Yamaguchi Prefecture. Let's listen to him talk about the work. I came up with the idea of this work after finding out about a breed of cattle called Mishima cattle that live on the isolated island of Mishima. There aren't any supermarkets, convenience stores, or cell phone shops on the island. It's a place where time seems to have stopped. This made me imagine a Japan that never really existed, but might have if the Showa period had continued to the present day. Instead of using a new camera to capture this, I thought it would be better to use a camera from that period. So I chose 8mm film. Another reason for using film was that I wanted to approach the past with a sense of nostalgia as seen from the future. We cannot see the future, but it is virtually possible to look back at the present from the future in a nostalgic way. It might look like a very old work, but what I really wanted to consider was the future. Let's listen to the artist. The two women in this video are my real grandmothers. I use an interview format to shoot them, asking them what they think of each other. Your grandmothers are people who started out as complete strangers. Then, the moment their son or daughter found a partner, they were compelled to become part of a community by joining the same family. Then, the moment a grandchild was born, they began to share the role of grandmother. I created this work in order to convey something about the role that a grandmother plays in a family, as well as the subtly wavering emotions and dual state that exists between these two individuals. In dealing with voices, I became deeply interested in people's lips. For example, when eating or kissing someone, we often use lips to make contact with the world outside. But in a way, our lips are also organs that are directly connected to our inner body. I am deeply struck by this amazing fact that we show our mouths to other people as we live our daily lives. Niall Kedding makes use of a wide range of elements, such as light, video, sound, and electricity. His new work, Magnitude, was inspired by an anecdote related to the invention of the incandescent light bulb in the late 19th century. Although a number of scientists, including Joseph Swan, were developing the technology at the same time, Thomas Edison came to be seen as the inventor of the light bulb, a myth that remains in circulation even today. In his work, Kedding poses various questions about the role of technology and narratives in society. Let's listen to the artist. 6 of the 7 paintings I'm showing in this exhibition depict local people in Roppongi who I met and interviewed. Please Wait for Me Until 4 a.m. focuses on a woman who works as an office lady during the day and works as a bar hostess at night. In the painting, I depicted traces of a tan on her back when she changes into a nightdress. She said she is losing her true self, not knowing which is the real her daytime self or her nighttime self, crossing some sort of line. It was very impressive. The woman in I'm Looking for Someone to Live with Me Just as I Am has a young daughter. She worked multiple jobs, but eventually adopted a business-like approach and decided to make ends meet as a prostitute on an online dating site. She said in the interview that every time she meets a man for the first time, she hopes that he, her daughter, and she could spend the rest of their lives together. By seeing the stretch marks on her belly, he should realize she's a mother, and she wants to see how he would react. I tried to capture such a moment in this work. Although the works depict random people, when viewers look at the pictures and titles, I hope they will come up with their own story. I want people to understand my work by misinterpreting it in a good way. Kobayashi Erika's novels and artworks deal with the theme of invisible entities like time, memories, and radiation. Many different elements are intertwined in this installation. A story of the artist's mother, who was born 2 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Trinity Test, the world's first detonation of a nuclear weapon, which occurred in America, and the atomic bomb, known as the Gadget, which was used in the test. We also hear Sunrise Serenade, a song that was on the radio at the moment of the test. These different elements urge us to form our own associations. By shedding light on history, Kobayashi's work calls attention to narratives that have been overlooked. What are these black objects on the conveyor belt? They are repeatedly carried to the top and dropped with a thud onto a vinyl sheet. Slightly cute, slightly weird, they all seem very mysterious. Nishihara now says, "Why do we move our bodies when we hear music? Why is it that when we feel happy, our bodies automatically start to move? When someone says their heart is dancing, is it really dancing?" In Bling Bling, Nishihara focuses on how the work's movements affect the viewer's senses and emotions. While conveying the tactile quality of the black objects, in hip-hop music, the term bling bling also refers to flashy accessories and other shiny things. Nishihara explores a variety of connections between sound, matter, dance, and the human heart. This film by Jun Yang, a Chinese-born artist, references Hiroshima Mon Amour, a 1959 film directed by Alain Resnais, with a screenplay by Marguerite Duras. This original film is a love story between a nameless man and woman that was shot in Hiroshima. Using fragmented images of shadows, history, guilt in the past, forgiveness, and the future, the narrative unfolds in a city that is closely associated with the tragedy of war. Structures inspired by the Jantar Mantar, an architectural construction created as an astronomical observation facility in India in the 18th century, seem to express the human desire to comprehend the world. And they also remind us of the flow of historical time, and light and shadow in history. These photographs show various exhibitions and performances that were held in Tokyo in the 1960s. Nishiyama Teruo, the photographer of these, was an avid follower of avant-garde art, who attended various historic events organized by practitioners of Neo-Dada, Fluxus, and other movements. He captured the events in photographs and kept them along with related notes and mementos. Based entirely on his personal interests, Nishiyama made these documents from the standpoint of a viewer. Today, 50 years later, they have become a valuable resource to understand the art of the era. In this work, J. Chung and Q. Takeki Maeda focus on Nishiyama's activities. The acts of observation and documentation performed by the avant-garde artists are juxtaposed with Nishiyama's own acts. Let's listen to the artist. I lived in London for a while, and when I came back to Japan in around 2013, I saw the news about an unmarried woman receiving permission to freeze her eggs. When I saw it, I thought, you could do that a few years ago in London. Then I started wondering why there had been a time lag. What had caused this to happen? If we, the concerned parties, didn't have the authority to decide something as important as that, who did? I read a book about iPS cells, and it said that in the future, it would become possible for same-sex couples to have children. That made me wonder who would be the one to give permission to do that when the technology emerged. I imagined that when discussions and articles on the subject started to appear, conservative people would reflexively say something like, "Huh? What on earth is that? Is it really okay for human beings to do something like that?" To take that response a step further, I wondered if someone like that could actually say, "You should never have been born," when they face a family image like these. Because opposing this idea essentially means that someone shouldn't exist. In this work, I wanted to stimulate people's imaginations and sense of empathy. Well, how did you like Roppongi Crossing 2016? My Body, Your Voice. Did you catch a glimpse of a new world in the artist's works, which deal with subjects such as the future promised by science and technology and the recognition of increasingly diverse lifestyles? Nothing would please us more than knowing that you enjoyed these fresh, creative expressions. We look forward to your next visit to the Mori Art Museum. Please return the audio guide at the designated area as you leave. Thank you.